business boosting content, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday, brought to you by the NSBC and powered by Canva. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today for this unbelievably valuable and power-packed session. Let's get this chat rolling and figure out where you are all joining us from. Pop in the chat where you're joining us from, and let's see. There we go. So, my name is Leanne Rhodes, and I am the creative director at the NSBC. And I can't quite express just how excited I am about the session, and specifically how Canva has opened up a whole world, a whole brand new world for business owners. But before we get into that, okay, I see we've got someone from Durban, from the Western Cape, from Johannesburg. Welcome, welcome. Oh, from Benoni. Another one from Johannesburg, Bloemfontein. We really are representing South Africa. Another one from Durban. Very, very welcome. There we go. Cape Town representing as well. So, like I said, before we dig into the session, I actually want to do a little bit of a poll. So, as a designer myself, I have been on the Canva platform for quite a bit of time now, and I really enjoy how user-friendly it is. I actually use it on a daily basis at this point, how quick it is and how accessible it is. Let's do a quick poll in the chat. Who of you are currently using Canva? And are you a complete newbie? You've never logged in before? That's one option. The next option is you've dipped your toes in, but you're keen to see how, this will help you in your business. Or are you a super fan, a regular user? Let's get a feel for what South Africa sees and thinks about small businesses. As a designer, I have worked with small businesses throughout my entire career, and I have seen the impact of a well-crafted business identity and brand communication strategy can have on things like credibility and trust and differentiation from your competitors, and of course, sales. But I've also seen that, true success is not defined by a tool itself, but rather the thinking and the strategy that then can guide its use. And that is where storytelling comes in. And that is what today is all about. So you'll see it is no longer this nice to have marketing skill, but it is a core growth strategy for small businesses. All right. So let's see. We've got a super fan. We've got some big time newbies. I see Elsha Stain says she loves Canva. She uses it for all of her projects. Okay, so we've got, this newbie has created a logo only. Okay. We say Lebogang saying Canva is my girl. All right, very nice. Okay, so we've got a whole mix of people here today. So now with that stage set, I would like to welcome on screen the Canva Africa marketing lead and a digital and content marketing expert, Bianca Sabia. Bianca, welcome to this webinar. We are thrilled to have you here today.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me, Leanne. It's so nice to see that there are people dialing in from all over the country. Amazing.
It's fantastic.
Super grateful. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Bianca, let's kick this off. We're talking about storytelling, and rather than reading out your bio, I think it's so much more powerful when we tell our own stories. Am I right? So
yeah,
tell us a bit about your story, how you find yourself at Canva, and why you are so passionate about helping small business owners.
I think let me just take it back to my little short stint as an entrepreneur. In 2010, 2011, I went on a trip to Bangkok. And part of the experience there was just looking at how so much of the informal economy and the entrepreneurship economy is driven by mobility. So a lot of the food, the bakeries, and all of that is being sold on mobile carts on the pavement, right? And it really triggered a thought in me, like, what if I were to take that idea back home and create a business where I can play with the idea of mobility, but do something that I'm passionate about. So at the time, it was actually fashion. So I started this company called Pumpkin Ivy, which was essentially two styles of dress that were very popular in Soweto in the 70s. And the thing that was, I guess, the USP was the fact that we found this really amazing mobile home. It was 9.3 meters long, massive truck. I got funding, put a business plan together, got someone to design a logo and develop a brand CI, and then raised some funding and then took it on the road. And I did that for almost 7 years before I went into corporate. And I guess then my journey into how I ended up in Canva is largely based off the fact that, one, I've always been very deliberate about how I work with brands to make sure that they're doing the right thing when they come to the continent, because we're a very specific type of people. And within that, there's so much differentiation across how users apply themselves to the platform to grow their businesses, to be teachers in classrooms, to be parents who have kids at home, to teach them. So I guess within the ambit of Canva, I love their mission. The mission of Canva is basically a two-step program. One is to be the most valuable that we possibly can be, which is creating tools that are constantly evolving based on humans' needs. And being able to democratize access for everybody. And then the second piece is being able to do the most good that we can. So Canva, for the Canva Pro solution, if I were to call it, that is available to everybody in the education sector for free, in perpetuity. And I love that. And I think there's so much work that we're going to be doing on the continent in order to grow what that looks like. So that's largely why I joined the organization. So I joined in August. So I'm still pretty much a newbie. But so is the rest of the team. There's 5 of us, and we are doing everything that we can to pay attention, ask questions, and most importantly, I guess, in this conversation, is also taking what we know and also taking information in to understand what else do we need to do in order to empower business owners and SMBs to design and be better at what they do best, which is run their businesses.
Yes, incredible. I found a phrase that in the description for this talk that really stood out to me, because it really resonates with me personally, who's creating content on a daily basis, that, you know, the more digital the world becomes, the more tools we have access to, the crowded and more highly competitive that market is. And often we think to be heard, we need to shout the loudest. But you said something interesting. You said, you don't win by shouting the loudest. You win by telling the clearest, most human story. And I think that essentially the content that resonates with people as above all the noise. So this you've kind of branded under the term storytelling. And I'm curious, and I'm sure everyone here is, because I know small businesses are going to want to shout the loudest. Do you feel like you have to make the logo bigger, add like 20,000 posts a day, you know, like I need people to see me. But you say storytelling is a slightly different approach. Would you take us down that road? Let's explore this concept a bit more.
Fantastic. Just give me a second. I want to just project something so I can take you through my thinking. And a lot of this is really anchored on understanding where do we find ourselves in the world right now, and really what is going to be the most valuable to everybody on the call. I'm also mindful of the fact that not everybody is going to be someone that wants to shout. So how do we then give you a little bit of a framework that you can consider in how you show up on a day-to-day basis? How's my screen? Can you see?
Good. Yes, everything.
Fantastic. So yes, I'm Bianca Sibia. And the one thing that I really found so impactful was, just given where we find ourselves in this new digital age with the attention economy and so much stress, and I guess being able to figure out, how do you show up across multiple platforms? How do you run your business? How do you wear all the different hats in your organization? It's then saying entrepreneurship is really just that constant discovery of what your inner self is capable of, because within that unlocks everything else that you do. So what does that practically mean? Today, I just really want to take you through what I think the real value is in terms of the power of visual storytelling. And as somebody who works for Canva, we deal with different individuals on a daily basis across different sectors. And I think in the ambit of each of you, as you run your businesses, there might be some helpful tips that you can take out of this. So just the TLDR, the agenda for today, I'm going to give you an overview of why it matters, a very simple framework that you can consider. And then the third piece is the ingredients. So what do you need in order to create effective storytelling as you evolve, not just as a person, not just as a business owner, but also your brand? Then we'll do a little exercise. So guessing the brand based on the learnings from the principal. And then I'll give you a little bit of a parting gift at the end of it. So we're here. Why visual storytelling?
There's an incentive to stay till the end for that parting gift.
I should hope so. I love this creative because it talks about the importance of the psychology behind humans and how we absorb information. And I think being in the visual economy, it's very important that people understand that how you show up as a brand and the visual representation matters way more than just words on a screen and text and a logo. And that means for human beings specifically, our brain activity is very deliberate in terms of how it absorbs information. And when we're using visual literacy, the creativity is what really lands in people's minds, which then impacts how they absorb that particular piece of communication. I found the stat yesterday, which actually blew my mind, and I think it's probably even way more. The average person sees between 6,000 to 10,000 ads per day. And that's presuming that you're obviously spending a little bit of time online, but also that you are being fed so much of information. So I guess the challenge is, how do you cut through that clutter and how do you show up as a brand? The other consideration is there's so many channels that we are dealing with. So where do you go? New formats. Do I do video? Do I do static? Do I just focus on WhatsApp as a channel? And also keeping in check in terms of those new technologies, because again, they're rolling out fast and furious. So I guess my first point of consideration is always ensure that you keep things as simple as possible, right? Stick to what you know best and utilize some of the tools that we're recommending for you. I have a question, and I'd like people to just add this into the chat. How many of you feel like you spend way too much time explaining things where there's an opportunity for you to actually be able to show that visually? I'd love to just see that in the chat. I'll continue on so long, and then Leanne, you can just tell me what people's feedback is.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. So in the ambit of visual storytelling, the whole point of this discussion is, how do you connect emotionally with your brand, with you as the business owner or somebody that works within an organization in order to build trust? That's the anchor of what we're talking about. Within visual storytelling, the most important thing is, how do you create memorability? And how do you get the people that are watching or viewing your content to be able to engage with you? Because that really informs how people then digest what you're trying to tell them. We did an amazing study in 2024 and 2025. And some of the stats that came out that really blew my mind was the fact that our ability to retain information when we hear something is only at 10%, which means visuals will have a far more greater impact at 65% because it creates resonancy amongst the audiences. So better visuals means better business for you. And that means in the ambit of the report that we conducted in last year for 2025, the stats came out across the globe that said that most of the business leaders say that visuals speed up sales and drive faster conversions. So there's a lot of work to be done in order to understand how do you then anchor your messaging as a business owner in this space. And similarly, again, being able to utilize visuals to make complex ideas simple to understand. So what is the framework? Yes,
we're seeing quite a few in the chat saying they spend way too much time explaining. And then we have a few people like Mariana that concurs what you're saying. She says visuals save a lot of time. Many say daily. It's absolutely way too much time. So I think we're spot on there, and the use of visuals makes sense then. I mean, time is so valuable to small business owners and everyone for that matter.
Absolutely. And I guess the complexity is also understanding that a lot of you wear multiple different hats, right? So I do want to anchor the fact that Canva is not just a design tool, it's a productivity platform. Something cool that I saw a couple months ago was this creator who created a very simple instruction within Canva. She moved into her new apartment. She took a photo of her lounge and her kitchen. She then took photographs of the furniture that she had moved into the premises. Then she went online and she found interesting things that she could decorate her space with. So photograph of the blank room, photograph of the furniture she owned, and then 3 to 4 screenshots of things that she really liked that she wanted to purchase online. And she asked the Canva AI to set up the room using what she had given it in order to then help her design and make the decision as to what would make best sense for her space. And the results was phenomenal. So I guess the point I'm trying to land here is that whilst I understand that there is so much to be done, the tool is not just about creating visuals. It's also about understanding how do you utilize it to manage a lot of the, I guess, the day-to-day humdrum, right, of running a business. So, how are you setting up your automations for your invoices, as an example? How are you managing your website updates? How are you curating your testimonials on the platform? And then also similarly looking at other opportunities to be able to create interesting ads that you then run across digital spaces, as an example. I love the feedback. Thank you very much, guys. Please keep it coming. This is a 2-way conversation or 3-way with Leanne. So let's go through the framework. Let's go through the framework of visual storytelling. So we like to keep things simple at Canva, and the language that we use is also very simple as well. So we always like to talk about how do we anchor what we're trying to achieve in this particular scenario. So it's about visual storytelling. So what is your so what? And why is it important? Why is your product or your service important? That's the first piece. Number 2, who cares? So why is it relevant to your customers that you're trying to attract in order for them to be able to convert and become a customer of yours? And then the third piece is what action are you trying to get your audience to take when they're looking at those visuals that you're putting out, whether it's a static, a video, or other. So always keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate things. One idea per piece of content. That's it. So how do you organize all of those ideas? Again, in the simplicity, it's always ensuring that you have a hierarchy. So where am I looking first when I look at a static piece of content? Human beings read information in a Z format, and it's important to understand that when you put too much information on a page, it generally just causes confusion, and then the brain kind of switches off. The second piece is around contrast. So how do you make things pop with either your color wheel, your logo, and your payoff line, and then of course utilizing negative space, because again, less is more. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like. So this is a nondescript ad that was made for a bank, and it shows hierarchy. So if you think of the Z format of how we consume information, we're looking at collect first. Then our eyes will go to the picture of the lady on the left. And then the sign up now is your call to action. And then you'll probably run back into banking made easy. That is an example of a hierarchy. When we're looking at contrast, right, you've got your colors as a CI, as a brand CI that you've already identified and put together. It's then saying in this iteration, contrast gives you colors where your eyes are then easily attracted to in order to take out the key information. Similarly with negative space, you don't have to fill everything up. And what I love about this design specifically is that it's got very simplistic colors, but the key message takeout is here. A very simple example, of course, but again, the messaging and the framework works in that. So let's go on to visual components. So as a brand, you've got your logo, you potentially have your fonts. And if you don't have your fonts, there's plenty of them available within Canva. You've got your color wheel that you're focusing on, and then your key assets, which is essentially how do you then show up when you're creating your design. Something that is very important is within Canva, there is millions and millions and millions of different templates to help you get started. So you don't have to start from scratch. So the 3 principles of telling and good storytelling within visuals is start with your why. So why am I doing this and what am I trying to achieve? How do you simplify your messaging so that it's easily digestible to people that are viewing that particular messaging? And the third piece is consistency, which I know is a very hard thing to do because you have such a busy day, making sure that you are putting your messaging out as succinctly as possible. So my next question is, what does the word brand mean to you? Also, I'll leave that for you guys to add into the chat. And then we'll come back to those, Leanne.
Sure.
My understanding of brand is a brand does not exist until you build trust. And that means making sure that what you put out from a messaging point of view to talk to your product, your solution, your why, that then builds trust because customers will start to understand what you're trying to do. Why is it of interest to them? when they purchase, having a good experience of purchasing your particular product or service, and that then informs the growth of your brand. So trust is very important. If we look at the components of a strong brand, again, I've spoken about this. So be very clear in terms of who you are as a business, how you're showing up, and how you stay consistent. I'm going to jump onto the next one. So how do you show up? Let's be honest. Do you feel like you have stories that are worth telling about your business? I'm going to stop here and I'm going to give a little bit of an example. There is a creator that I had the opportunity to meet when I was still working at TikTok. Her name is Kayla Kim K. And when she started her business, I think it was in early 2023, she had this vision to be able to create a curly girl hair range. One, because it wasn't readily available in South Africa at the time, and two, because she saw the niche that she could potentially own. What was so powerful about her journey is that she's been documenting everything on TikTok. From the day that she started, trying to get investment, working with putting samples together, in order to understand what are the ingredients that work for different types of hair. And I think the most important call out for here is, in that process, she's able to build her brand purely off the fact that she was very honest about her journey, the highs and the lows, mind you. So the struggles that she had, as well as the wins that she had, and the journey that she's taken to 2026, where she now has over 2.5 million engaged users on her platform to basically sell her business to. So she doesn't have to run paid ads. She's built a community off the fact that she was able to, one, show up as a brand, tell her story, be very deliberate and consistent about it, and most importantly, then drive conversion to sales.
When you start to document more stories in your life, it does more than just make you a great storyteller. It strengthens your identity. It strengthens who you are. When someone writes a comment and says, "Oh, Vin, you're a money-hungry piece of garbage," well, it doesn't hurt me because I've got more than 50 stories in the last 2 years of how I was generous to those people around me who I love. I've got stories that back up that I'm a generous person. When you've got all these stories that back up who you are as a person, you don't fall for just everything. You become more grounded. People can't push you over. It's very difficult. I've got so many stories that back up who I am as a person. You can't hurt me with that.
The key takeout there is stick to your truth, most importantly. And again, in the ambit of telling your story, it's important that you understand that when you describe what you're doing, be consistent with it and be transparent about what you're trying to achieve, because that is the most important thing. And I always say this, that people buy into people before they buy into brands. So my next question is, if a customer was to describe your business to a friend in one sentence, what would you want them to say? And that's probably a very nice way to anchor if you're thinking or maybe confused or a little bit of uncertain of how you tell your story as a founder. This probably is a very good place to start. So think of the qualities of your business. If it were to have a persona, what were the things that you would like people to know about your business, and how would they articulate those? Because that will help you inform the story that you want to tell. I'm going to pause here for a second, Leanne, just so I can come back to the chat and see if there's any comments or questions.
I spotted quite a nice one from Precious Swanee. She says, to me, brand is trust built consistently through structured delivery, professional integrity, and measurable results.
Agreed. And that's a hard one, right? Because there's a lot in there. You've got to figure out how you show up. You've got to manage your content. You've got to manage your messaging. You've got to manage your product and your services solutions. You've got to figure out how to manage and track the success and where you're winning and where you're losing, and then kind of, loop back the circle again in order to make sure that you're course correcting where it makes sense. And I guess the beautiful part about that is when you run a business on your own, you have the ability to pay attention to those and course correct as you can. So I love that comment.
Definitely. I see another one that says brand for me is a feeling or perception of something. So that's quite open, but it does kind of connect with that, it does bring up that emotional connection that people have with you, and then which leads into trusting. But I guess one of the big things is you can't just look good. It has to filter through your entire business to actually earn that trust. But it starts with that impression.
Exactly. And I guess you've got to back yourself as well, because the trust is earned based on how you show up and how you roll out your product every day, and be consistent with how you treat your customers, because that's important, right? And create ease of being able to buy your product. I think one of the things that I find very interesting, because I'm a part of a WhatsApp group in my area here in Linden, And there is a plethora of home-based business owners who do a lot of like catering and sewing and those kinds of services, which are great. And what I find interesting is that a lot of them are like, they would talk about what the service offering is, but then in order to find them and get the pricing, that stuff is quite sticky, right? It's very difficult to get that information out. So it's about then saying, as you're thinking about how you're building your brand, it's also thinking about how do you make it as easy as possible for the person who's receiving your messaging to find you as quickly as possible and start booking you, buying from you, and whatever that may be. Right?
Absolutely. There's one more here, which I think actually links a little to that, and that a brand is not just a logo, but it's a shortcut for promises, trust, and conversations.
Yeah, but one has to follow the other, I would imagine, right? So your brand won't exist unless everything else before that is actually managed very strategically. So a logo is only a logo, but the value of the brand, and I guess your brand equity, really comes from how you are packaging your narrative, how easy it is for people to be able to get hold of you, to purchase your product and your services, and their experience of it. And you're also paying attention to how you are also, I guess, creating a two-way conversation if there's feedback from that particular person, right? And how do you manage those pieces? Because that builds brand strength.
Absolutely.
Any other comments?
Let's see. They're just coming in fast and furiously, yeah. Yeah, it seems like consistency and trust is coming through quite a lot.
Mm.
And then we've got a story,
Yes.
a comment here about what part of the story do you share? And I think that's what you are going to go into next, it seems like.
Yes, it's your story, Sean. It's your story, literally. So let's go into a little bit of that. So the complexities of like, okay, so now you've given me all this framework, but I don't really have stories to tell. The reality is everybody does. Everybody has a story to tell. Let's give you a little bit of a structure. So good stories have 3 arcs. I like to think of visual storytelling or in a business ambit as much like a film, right? You've got a hero, there's a struggle, and there's a solution, right? Or resolution. And in thinking about how you develop what that arc is going to be, it's then saying, fine, my product service, potentially, I'll give you a scenario. There is a guy that I saw on TikTok a couple of months ago who started a business where he literally just sells tar in a bag. A couple of kilograms of tar in a bag. And he started making content because he realized that a lot of the smaller communities don't necessarily have the resources from the support of the government to fix potholes. So he decided to target straight up into communities to say, we sell tar in a bag, you buy it by kilograms, this is the amount that it costs, and this is how easy it is to basically place this into your streets. And it gives you the power then as a community to then crowdsource and have those tar pieces laid out into the roads. It fixes potholes. That's the pain point or the struggle. And then the resolution is you are now, as a community, empowered to be able to just sort things out and get the resolve. And his story has basically been documenting what their journey looks like from where he started to now where he finds himself, where he's one of the key suppliers to a lot of municipalities around the country. And that is a short window, but he was very consistent. He found a problem that he wanted to solve, and he created a solution in order to manage what that looks like. So again, like I mentioned, when you're telling your story, you're making a movie, and that sits inside the customer's brain. So again, going back to the visual I showed earlier on, when we are digesting information as human beings, visuals first, audio second, right? In the architecture of your story, again, who's the hero? Is it you as the founder, for example? You've identified a problem that you would like to solve. You've created a business around it. Talk about your journey. The action is the piece that then speaks to, this is what I've identified, and this is how I have solved for this based on my product, services, or solution. The dialogue just refers to how you're bringing that to life. I find that people are still quite nervous about creating video content, and the reality is that's where people's attention are sitting at the moment. So don't be shy to start speaking. I always encourage people to just set up their phones and just record themselves randomly, not necessarily for something to post, but just to also get the experience of being able to look back on how you communicate on camera and where you potentially would like to course correct some of those things that you have to do. And then the last piece, of course, is creating emotion. So what do you want people to take out of that piece of communication that you put onto the platform? Consistency, another hard one. So how do you stay consistent? Again, you've got your brand framework. You've got an idea of what you would like to talk about because you found a problem that you want to solve within your business solution. And it's then saying, how do I show up and put that into practice? I've got some examples of how brands show up when it comes to who they are, the visual identity, and what that looks like on channel. And I want to just see what some of you are able to either easily identify or not. So let's play Guess the Brand.
Feels like we need a good intro for that, like a game show.
Okay, so here's one. Leanne, you're going to have to tell me if there's comments in the chat. I'm going to give you another.
I will indeed. Just so you know, the chat and our visuals there's a slight delay. So if you would allow, we might take a bit of time there, but I think you gave people a bit of a hint as to this one.
Yeah, I gave it away. So
but Sean did think Reebok, which is in the right. It's in the right.
Absolutely. Right vertical, definitely. So
Melanie got Nike straight away.
Very deliberate in terms of how they show up. And I know you're probably thinking, yes, Bianca, this is a very big brand. It's a very different niche. But the reality is they've basically aligned to the same thinking. How do you create a visual and memory structure in terms of how you show up? For Nike specifically, they're showing action. They're showing movement. There's a fitness identity. Their visual representation in terms of how they treat their photography is very specific. And I mean, they've just got a logo on there. They don't need to say much else, and you get what they're trying to do. Okay, here's another one. I'll pause for a bit and see if anybody guesses this. It's not a South African brand, but I think it's still relevant.
Well, let's just say with the Nike one, I would say about 90% of the comments coming in chose Nike. And like Priscilla said, looks like Nike. There were only 2 or 3 that maybe said Virgin Active or Everlast, but most identified it instantly as Nike, which is
Virgin Active is actually a good one. They're very deliberate with their red, the color red. Okay.
All right.
Can I reveal the next one?
Okay, wait. We're getting a South African answer for the blue.
Not a South African brand.
Yeah, so sorry, Zano, it's not Courier Guy. But Lebogang might be onto it. Lebogang says IKEA. Someone
well done.
Lebogang. Well done.
Well done. That's incredible. So again, IKEA has been very deliberate with how they show up as a brand. Their memory structures that they've built around their color wheel, even before you've even seen the logo, is very specific, and it's been consistent across all of their messaging. So key takeout is consistency with your brand. And that then speaks to how you utilize your logo, how you utilize your color wheels, and of course your fonts, and then your treatment in terms of your photography or your video. One last one.
All right. So what's good is it was kind of mixed, which makes sense if it's not a South African brand, but I would say about 60-70% guessed IKEA. So it's still a very strong global brand.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next one. Okay, waiting for those comments.
I tried to make this one a little bit hard. I took a screenshot of a billboard.
Okay, we've got one guess so far. I think the others are rolling in. Okay.
I'll give you another clue. There's the color.
Haha, all right. So our first winner there is Skumbuzo. She says pineapple.
Well done, Skumbuzo. Yes, it is pineapple.
There comes more pineapples.
I love this. Easy, right? It really is that easy. So, question to everybody is, what will you do today in order to tell your brand story tomorrow, knowing what you've learned in this session? Visual storytelling is not as hard as you think it is. I think if you have a very deliberate execution in terms of how your logo is designed, you've got a color wheel, the rest is very easy in order for you to then figure out, when I start my journey in terms of visual storytelling, what are the key components of brand values that I want to land? So I'll give you an example. Within Canva, one of the key things that we always talk about is the tone of Canva. So Canva is a female. She is a teacher. So she has the gentleness and the softness of a teacher. She speaks in very plain language. She is, I'm trying to think of the word now. She's someone that is approachable and relatable. And I think in terms of how the brand shows up, it's very deliberate in terms of what that means in terms of executions from a messaging point of view. And we also try to apply the same lens when it comes to the user experience on the platform as well. So for those who are on the call, do consider that as in terms of how you develop your story and how we then take it through. And then the last point that I wanted to lead with was just entrepreneurship is realizing that the person you have to become is harder to build than your business itself. So the stretch for yourself as a business owner before you even think about what is the work that I have to do with my brand is thinking about how you want to be able to develop yourself as an entrepreneur, because that is the evolution and that is the journey that you're going on. That will help you inform the stories you tell and how you show up online and how you treat your customers and how you manage the good and the bad within your business. And all that can be, I guess, the content that you feed into your funnel, which will help you inform the messaging that you put together as part of your visual storytelling journey. So I have some QR codes that I want to share, and apologies for those that are on mobile. I will give this to Leanne as well as a deck. The QR code on the screen is a link to what we call our design school. So it's a URL within Canva. And don't worry if you're not an existing user of Canva, it is open to everybody. The design school is basically an amazing ecosystem of different video tutorials that can take you through simple things like how do I start finding a logo? How do I search the platform? How do I create motion graphics? How do I publish to my social channels and set up schedules? There's a plethora of handy resources in there. And then I guess the next piece, which is the exciting one, is for the first 50 people that are able to scan this code, there is a 3-month Canva Teams voucher for you to be able to utilize. And when we talk about Canva Teams, it's basically for you to set up, and then you are able to add other individuals who then form part of your team so that you can co-create. So if you're working with freelancers, as an example, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to see or rather put briefs into the system for potentially content and collaborate with them live. You're able to then obviously also utilize it to set up your brand kits. So your logos, define your color wheel, develop all your assets that you need. So as an example, your link in bio could be developed in this as well. I'm going to leave this on screen and then hand over to Leanne.
Wonderful. So for all of you who are connected with us today and some who might have joined late, I've seen there's some comments regarding these slides. Fear not, if you have registered for this, you will receive an email with the replay link and any other vital links. So don't worry about that. Keep watching your email, and you can connect on any of our social platforms. So some of you are on Facebook, some are on LinkedIn, some are on YouTube. This webinar will stay on those platforms. So if you go to @NSBC Africa, you can access this at any point. I just love what you shared, Bianca. And so for those of you who think we're done, wait, there's more.
No, before you carry on, I just realized that I didn't put the actual redemption code. So when you scan this QR code, I've just put in the text at the bottom. So the redemption code is Canva NSBC. So it's going to take you through to a URL, and in that URL, you will then add in those letters as one word. It doesn't matter if it's higher case or lower case. And then you'll go through the journey of then redeeming. Just make sure you've got the app downloaded first on your device.
All right, there we go. That was very important to add. But like I was saying, for those of you who think we are done, we are not. There is still more. I promised you a power-packed session, and we are going to make the absolute most of the time. All right, so I'm just going to leave that on for a few more minutes. Remember, those of you who are asking about the code, remember to add in Canva NSBC, all lowercase. All right. Let's get into part 2, Bianca. All right. So now we've got an idea of what you mean by storytelling. But we also know that small businesses are really carrying the economy. And yet, so often they are excluded from formal systems like funding and procurement and even visibility. So, what role does storytelling play to help SMMEs differentiate themselves and show up in a way that drives business growth? And let's talk about it specifically online.
Yeah. Look, I think the reality is you've got a massively crowded digital market space. So pricing alone is not going to help you win. And I say this because I know that sometimes there's the concern around, if I make my product cheaper, I'll get more customers. But the reality is when it comes to storytelling and how it helps you as a small business owner, it does a couple of things. One is when you go through the journey of telling your story as a business owner, it humanizes your brand. Because again, people buy from people before they buy from brands. The second piece is it also signals what you value as a person and as a business owner, and it also drives your purpose and intent through how you communicate. The third piece would be building emotional connection, because again, as human beings, we buy based on who we connect with. And I guess that's largely why influencers for the longest of time, not necessarily now, has been very instrumental in terms of driving how that shows up on digital platforms. So being able to build an emotional connection is very important, and that comes with being able to create memorability. I guess for those who are businesses that are potentially excluded, I think especially storytelling becomes a very important visibility infrastructure, for lack of a better term, which basically means we know that a lot of businesses don't have big marketing budgets. You don't have potentially a retail space in the mall, and you may not necessarily have access to, a plethora of procurement lists. So maybe you're just not ready. So your story, for most part, becomes your billboard. So your online storytelling essentially then helps you build trust faster. It helps you build credentials. You start to gather testimonials. And I guess in the discoverability of how you show up on digital channels, whether it's Google, for example, it makes things so much more easier. I think for me, if I look at a restaurant, for example, that I haven't been to, I always look at the reviews. I'm sure most people are the same when it comes to buying something. So helping you show up on the platform and utilizing storytelling really helps your business from a credentials point of view. And it also helps your business feel more established, right? Because there is existing materials that can speak to what you're trying to do. And I guess the last piece is then it also helps your customers to understand that it's not just about what you're selling, but it's also about why should they care, and they will find that information. So I guess the key takeout here is your story turns your business survival into a brand that people can believe in.
That makes so much sense. Back to the South African context and how, we all know South African SMEs are contributing massively to our economy and also to unemployment, solving the unemployment problem. Would giving them access to creative tools extends actually beyond marketing if we look at it from that perspective. How is Canva enabling access to tools that really that are game changers for SMEs across the country and also Africa as a continent?
Yeah, I read a stat that said that the GDP contribution from SMEs in South Africa is between 36 and 40%. That's an astronomical amount of, I guess, contribution to the GDP. And I guess the other thing is the projection is that between now and 2030, 90% of the employment will come from small and medium businesses.
90%.
Yeah, which blows my mind. So I guess the tools that we have in order to empower you guys is not just about having a creative tool. How do we enable you, again, to be able to become economic multipliers in all of your respective spaces? So I guess in the ambit of Canva, it's then saying we are not just about enabling, but we also want to empower. So I guess enabling access. So how do we remove that design skill barriers? The platform itself is quite deliberate in setting up a lot of the tools and the templates to remove what people would believe as like a barrier to entry. So I'm not a designer. I have no idea how to design a logo. There's templates in the platform. So one is removing the skills, the design skills, nerves, I guess. The second piece is around, I guess, how do we lower the costs that you bear? Not everybody is able to afford the services of potentially a designer or potentially an agency in order to manage what your brand looks like on platforms. Again, very important that we enable, I guess, the democratization of access for that. The other pieces, of course, is enabling professionals to be able to develop documents, right? So in how you show up professionally, whether it's for a tender, for potentially getting funding. There's massive amounts of proposal templates, pitch decks, invoice templates, and the works. And then I guess from attracting talent, supporting your marketing, training, your internal systems. It's all those pieces that are available within the platform. I'm so sorry about that. I forgot to put my phone on mute. Oops. It's an insurance company. See, they're persistent.
And it will really mention them.
Exactly. So I guess the key takeout for this is, I guess Canva is not just enabling, I guess, economic infrastructure, but it's also about then supporting you with the tools in order to do not just but marketing, but also looking at how do you participate as part of this economy to do the very best that you can. And I think for me, creative access is business access.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely. And that leads quite well into the next question, which is, in South Africa, we see that entrepreneurship is not just this lovely startup story. It's actually often a survival strategy. And they are, with the many micro businesses out there, from 0 to 10 employees, a significant portion of those are owner run. How do you help a business like that build a brand story, especially when sales and survival are the top priority? Sometimes it feels like that's wasting my time. I need, sales today kind of thing.
And I guess that the consideration is that a lot of business owners are literally one employee at the start. So I also recognize that comes with the nervousness around saying that I don't have X, I don't have Y, so therefore I'm not going to focus on my storytelling. But the reality is your story doesn't have to be polished. It just needs to be real. Again, people buy from people before they buy into brands. So start again with the simple questions that I mentioned earlier. So why did you start? Who do you serve? Who is your customer? And what is the problem that you're trying to solve with your product or your services or solution? And what this does is it takes people to the journey of also identifying that you as a business owner, you have the resilience, you've got your responsibilities, you are empowering communities, you're uplifting, and of course, you're mastering your skill, because that's a journey in itself, right? So storytelling doesn't necessarily replace selling necessarily. It just makes things a lot easier, and it helps you curate a community of customers that can then trust you faster, refer you faster, and also feel proud to support you long term.
Brilliant. So we also see in South Africa that many SMMEs are primarily mobile fast. They use mobile first channels like WhatsApp and social. What would you say are the 3 story elements a small business must communicate fast? I mean, you mentioned some now, but so that the customer instantly understands the brand.
I think let's just refer to the thing I mentioned earlier on about the business owners in Linden. I think it's just about having clarity and being able to create ease of being able to access the information about your product or service. So most importantly, again, is if you are putting out a piece of communication, and let's say your channel of choice is a WhatsApp channel, and you have a business line, for example. So if I were to click into your profile and I have your number saved on my phone, is there a listing of your services? Is there a pricing menu, for example? Can I find out where you're based in the country? Right? Is it easy for me to find where you are? And then the second piece is what you're selling. So be very deliberate about saying, I'm not just a beauty services business. I'm a nail technician based in Soweto, as an example. Be very clear in terms of what your offering is and where you're based. And then the third piece is, why you matter. So is it around your USP or your superpower speed? Is it around quality? Is it around handmade? Is it bespoke? Do you have trust that you've built for the past X amount of years that you want to land? And I think if somebody lands on your profile, they should be able to understand that in literally 5 seconds. So whether it's in your WhatsApp DMs, if it's in your link in your bio on your social channels, or if it's on your website, for example, stick to the formula of I help X get X results through X, which is what you do.
Brilliant. Keep it simple, people. We don't have to overcomplicate it. Clear communication. All right. So we see that many township and informal businesses are deeply embedded in the community, and yet 80% are unregistered and locked out of formal markets. How can storytelling and brand identity help an informal business kind of build creativity and cross over then into the bigger markets, but you know, without losing authenticity?
Yeah, it's a very
Quite a fun question.
very interesting question. Again, to the stat that you mentioned, 80% of township businesses are unregistered. Credibility becomes a very important part of your currency, all right? And that means within your story and your brand identity, it's making sure that your business looks polished. So again, what are the tools and templates that you are leveraging, for example, within Canva, to set yourself up? Communicating professionally, building a documentation library that is able to then be easily accessed, that you can send information out. So if someone's looking for available, or do I say I'll get back to you with my pricing and then it's the next day? And I guess the piece around signaling legitimacy is also very important when it comes to informal economy. So having a consistent logo, putting your brand together, having a color wheel, being very deliberate in terms of how you show your products or services, having a proper invoice is something that's also important. You know, I always find that when we're working with a lot of freelancers, for example, they don't even have templates. You know, so how do you put a quotation together that's got all of your bank details, your VAT number, where you're based, your contact details? Then looking at your profiles as well, you know, in terms of your capability, gathering your testimonials so that you are presenting yourself professionally and getting your customers to be able to speak on your behalf so that when you're not in the rooms, they can refer you. Something also that I found very interesting is the before and afters. So how are you showcasing the problem that you identified and what you were able to achieve because you provided that service or solution? Because again, it's about being able to make sure that your storytelling is not just about showing up as a corporate business, but it's about showing up and being able to package your solutions authentically in a professional way. So don't lose your voice necessarily, but just refine how you show up.
Here we go. And speaking of voice, culture and language adds a powerful layer of connection. How is Canva enabling storytelling in a business's mother tongue? And why does this allow a brand to build a story more meaningfully?
Yeah, I lost the last bit of your question, but I'm presuming you're speaking about language and how that feeds into culture within the Canva ambit.
Yes.
We've done a lot of work on the back end to look at how do we address language, for example, within the platform. So even though for most of you, you're probably using Canva in English, it is actually available in 7 other different languages. So isiZulu, Xhosa, Sesotho, Afrikaans, etc. So what that allows from a usability point of view is to say, if I am a business and I happen to be in an area where I know that most of my customers speak Sezulu, for example, you can definitely change all of your content by literally going into your profile and then changing the language in your settings. When it comes to, I guess, the content that you would then produce in order to develop what your storyline is around your product or solutions as a business owner, that, of course, you can then customize based on your requirements. I think what's exciting about this is that it enables business owners to I guess, you know, have the flexibility of multilingual text. And then you've got things like custom fonts, which you can also upload. If you don't like the ones that are available, your subtitles on your videos. Once you start making your video content, you can also equally change those into the language of your choice. And then your voiceovers, you know, we also encourage people to be very authentic in terms of how they want to show up. There's no mandate that says that you have to perform everything in English, especially if you are looking at a very specific type of customer that you want to attract. And then I think, of course, looking at culturally relevant visuals. So what is true to you and your brand that you would like to be able to speak directly to your communities, and make sure that you are not generic, and making sure that you are authentic in terms of how you show up, right? Because again, it's about building that emotional loyalty. So I think in the ambit of Canva, it's then saying it's not just about the decorative tools, it's about creating connection through what is authentically you. So whether it's in your mother tongue and how you show up, those are the things that are important.
Amazing. And so you actually mentioned earlier that you had a run at TikTok, building creator ecosystems. And we know attention is brutally competitive. So what is the difference between, you know, getting views and content that actually builds brand equity? I know you can get maybe hundreds of thousands of views and it doesn't translate for your business. All right. For those of you out there, we just momentarily lost Bianca, but she is back.
I'm so sorry.
Bianca, you are back. It was a needed question. Let me try again. But very happy to see you back, because I really want you to answer this one. Attention is brutally competitive. What's the difference between views and, and then what content that actually builds brand equity, and how can small business owners avoid chasing trends? Because you might be popular, but it's not actually helping or your business or translating into sales, for instance.
It's so interesting because I guess, if this was a conversation we were having 5 years ago, views would have been everything. If I were to translate what views meant 5 years ago versus now, views is saying, you're creating content purely for the fact of either chasing a trend, you want virality, and you want to be able to create entertaining content. But the reality is there's no longevity in that. It does become forgettable. When we're talking about brand equity and how you show up on these different channels, the most important thing is, I like the term social selling. I think it's such a powerful way to be able to kind of frame this entire conversation. When you are showing up as a brand owner on any of the digital platforms, it's important that you understand that social selling is basically your fundamental way of telling your story and sharing your business ideals and what you're trying to achieve in order to attract that customer. And that comes with then saying that the real equity now for your brand is consistency. It's making sure that you have some sort of recognizable identity in terms of either your colors, your fonts, etc., being delivered with how you show up as representing of your visuals or your videos for the products or services that you're offering, and being able to be an expert. Be very honest and in terms of how you show why that you're the one to sell this particular product to someone, and what makes yours unique compared to others, because that also builds reliability and it builds trust. And then I think over time, that will then evolve into not just chasing a trend, but it's about you building that equity for your brand. Because I guess the most important thing is your content helps you reinforce what you want to be known for as either a founder or a business, somebody who runs a business. Trends are just great for visibility, but the storytelling that you have is the stuff that has the longevity. And I always encourage people to consider that as the option.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm jumping to a question here. Time is not on our side. I think we could be speaking about this for the next hours, the next day. But, storytelling can seem a bit fluffy, if I want to use that word, when you're trying to make money, You've mentioned some elements now, but what are the practical signs that your brand story is actually driving growth? Is it more inquiries, and what should companies look to measure on the long and the short term? Because it is a long game, actually, building this credibility, building a brand. It's not something you do once; it's you constantly building it.
And again, it's a long game, right? So your story's got to do the work. So I think if you're looking at short term, you want people to come to your platforms, whether it's your website, whether it's engaging with you through DMs, your WhatsApp inquiries, and you want engagement. You want people to be curious about your product because that gets them into the funnel. When we're looking at medium term, it's then saying, what am I doing to make sure that I get customers to come back? So are there repeat customers? How am I managing referrals? Something that's really important nowadays is also being able to incentivize customers that are doing referrals for you. So do you have something in place that speaks to that? And then that also then builds on your ability to manage your increasing pricing power. So don't be afraid of also making sure that as you build your brand equity, that you don't necessarily compromise on how you're able to manage what your pricing is. And then, of course, better word of mouth. That's your medium strategy, right? When you're looking at long-term, short-term and medium-term feeds into your long-term, which is stronger brand recognition, opportunities to collaborate with other brands and create partnership opportunities. And then I think that's where you will then be able to comfortably say, I'm ready to go for a tender. I'm ready to look at bigger opportunities to grow my business. And most importantly, for those who want to be able to sell long-term, it's then saying, do I have the confidence in where I find myself now to start attracting investors? So your story is important. Just make sure that in terms of the ultimate test, your customers are choosing you for your business more than your price.
Very good. And then lastly, and I've had this experience as well, it's one of the things I love so much about the Canva solution. Canva positions itself around access. And so designing on a phone in Soweto or building a brand in Cape Town, what does access really mean in practice for South African SMEs? And how is Canva seeking to break those barriers?
Mobile first, mobile first, mobile first.
Definitely.
Average person purchases everything on a phone. The other thing to consider is data is expensive. So whether your customers are within South Africa or globally, it's also understanding how easy it is for your site to load. Is your website taking a really long time to load, and what do you need to relook in terms of fixing what that looks like? The templates that are available, again, making sure that it's easy enough for you to be able to replicate and create that for yourself so that you can apply it to all your different platforms. You don't need to necessarily have a massive amount of skills. So when we look at what's available within the platform, it's then saying, I'm taking what I need in order to create my brand messaging so I can put that into the market, and it should be easily digestible by the person that's receiving it. Affordability is something that obviously you would need to manage based on how you put your pricing model together. But again, also, I guess it's a two-way conversation. There'll be some instances where you would be able to negotiate with a customer if they were to potentially challenge your prices. And then, of course, being able to look at multi-language support. So language, again, English obviously is the instructional language for most. But again, it's also making sure that you can show up in languages other than English where it makes sense. And I think for SMMEs, it's making sure that you are building with the understanding that you are communicating with a smartphone or a mobile first only customer. People share information. So how easy is it for somebody to share a piece of content that you've put on and still be able to contact you if they haven't had the initial platform that it was taken from? Yeah, that's it. You don't need a degree. You just need to make sure that you just do some practice and practice.
Absolutely. Bianca, that is it for us today. I feel like everyone on the call today is going to need to go watch this replay and take down some notes. And it may feel like a fire hose to some of you, all the information, but if you just take one of Bianca's tips today and implement it, it can completely change your business. And then go for the next one, and then take the next one. The trick is to just start thinking differently and use the tools at your disposal to take your business forward and to grow your business. I know at the NSBC, we want to help small businesses, and I know Canva share this. We want to help small businesses because it directly affects our country, it affects the people of our country, and it creates employment, which is one of the most amazing things that a human can have, that dignity of employment. So keep doing what you're doing, use the tools at your disposal, keep growing so that South Africa can thrive, so that we can make a difference here in our country. So that's my closing remark. Bianca, do you have anything to add? Do you have anything from Canva's side, or any closing remarks or any comments that you would maybe like to answer before we
There's so many questions in the chat, but I think what I would like to just land here is that we will be hosting a number of different workshops over the year, specifically targeted for small business owners. So I know some of you are probably not even familiar with the platform. Don't worry, we will get in touch. Leanne will send you an email or a newsletter with a whole bunch of different links of various events that we're going to have in Johannesburg, in Cape Town. We call them community labs. Where we literally get together in a room, and then you come with your device, and then we do a 101 on how to use Canva, starting with the very bare basics. And then for those who are a little bit more experts on the platform, we will also have programs specifically designed out for those as well. Okay.
All right. So there we go. A huge thank you, Bianca, for your time today. A huge thank you for Canva for connecting with the NSBC. We really value this partnership. We see it making a big impact in our country. And to everyone who joined today, thank you so much. We will be in contact. There's a lot more in store for you this year. So walk the journey with us, and we will do everything in our power to help you grow your businesses. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day further.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
For more business boosting content, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts.